We don't know, but we don't think we have any special guests or media, but we are being live streamed, as Sanja just said. So welcome to those who may be on the line. And we are recording as well. Chancellor Tidings, as you heard Sanja say, I think as we were assembling, is on her way back to the office, having completed her testimony this morning in the House Education Committee. And I know we'll look forward to hearing from her about that once she is able to join us. So without further ado, why don't we officially get underway, and I will ask Sanja to call the roll, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The list before me. I was busy talking rather than, here we go. Here's my roll call sheet.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you. Governor Lee. Regent Apple. Here. Regent Burdine.
Here.
Regent Duckett. I know he plans to join us. He may be a moment or two late.
Okay.
Regent Gill.
Here.
Regent Goldsmith.
Here.
Regent Green.
Here.
Regent Hatch.
Here.
Regent Hatcher.
Here.
Regent Krause. I know he plans to join us, but I'm sure he's still delayed downtown.
Okay.
Regent McElyea.
Here.
Regent Prescott.
Here.
Regent Reed.
Here.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
I'm here.
Regent Schwinn. Regent Shockey. Regent Varlin.
Here.
Regent Wonk.
Here.
Regent White.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you all very much. As we get down to business, our first item is to consider minutes from our June 19, our just passed regular quarterly board meeting, and then, of course, the August 12 special session that was held. You have received copies of those minutes. Does anyone have any corrections or changes? If not, we will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mary Lou.
Thank you, Regent Apple. And a second?
Second, Regent Prescott.
Thank you, Barbara. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the roll one more time. Sanja? Sanja? Sanja, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Regent
okay.
Apple. I'm sorry. Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Duckett, have you joined?
Yes. Aye.
Good, good.
Thank you. Regent Gill.
Aye.
Regent Goldsmith.
Aye.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Hatcher.
Aye.
Regent McElyea.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Aye.
Regent Shockey, have you joined? Regent Varlin.
Aye.
Regent Wonk.
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. Since the Chancellor is not back with us yet, and this is a question to Sanja and to Brian Lapps, may I hold the report on interim action until she joins us for us to hear from her and call for a motion to approve?
Yes, that's fine, Vice Chair.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you. So we'll then move directly to the report of the good committee work everyone did yesterday. We have 5 committee reports with everyone's permission, and I think we have been doing this in these times we've been meeting virtually. since we do have to have a roll call vote given the electronic nature of our meeting. We'll hear all 5 reports, the 4 from yesterday plus audit, and take an action on all 5 reports at one time, assuming that's the consensus of the board. So assuming there is no objection, I would like to start with Regent Duckett, Chairman of the Finance and Business Operations Committee, for his report from yesterday, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance and Business Operations Committee met in regular session yesterday. The committee reviewed 2 items at the meeting that included technology access fee spending plans for fiscal year 2020-2021, system budget request to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. As chair of the committee, I move that the board approve as presented the report of the September 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Committee on Finance and Business Operations.
Thank you, Chairman Duckett. We have a motion to approve the report of the Finance and Business Operations Committee. Do we have a second?
Second.
This is Fanny Varlin.
Thank you. I think we have, Sandra, did you get that? Both Regents Prescott and Varlin on the second. Oh, wait a minute. I was going to take up all 5 at once. Hold that thought. Thank you. Hold that thought. We will park that motion to approve and take them up at once. Brian, is that still okay?
Yes, that is fine, Vice Chair.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Regent Duckett. This virtual stuff is not easy sometimes, right? Thank you all for your patience. Having heard the report of the Finance and Business Operations Committee meeting, we will then move to Regent Apple for a report from her Workforce Development Committee, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Workforce Development Committee met in a public informational session yesterday to review reporting on the following items: update on apprenticeships and current projects and center updates. As Chair Committee, I move that the board approve the report of the September 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Workforce Development Committee as presented.
Thank you very much, and it was a good session indeed. Next to Regent Green for a report from Personnel and Compensation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Personnel and Compensation Committee met in regular session on yesterday, September 22nd, to review and recommend approval of the following items: tenure upon appointment, faculty promotion by exception for TCAT Shelbyville, faculty promotion increase adjustments for Jackson State and TCAT Shelbyville, new and or amended compensation plans for 3 colleges, Jackson State, Dyersburg State, and Roane State Community College, and tenure recommendations for 6 faculty members at Volunteer State Community College. As committee chair, I move that the board approve the report of yesterday's September 22nd meeting of the Committee of Personnel and Compensation as presented.
Thank you, Regent Green, and that too was a good session. To Regent Prescott, Chairman of the Academic Affairs Committee, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair Reynolds. The Academic Policies and Programs and Student Life Committee met in a public informational session yesterday to review reporting on the following items: proposed revisions to TBR Policy 1.12.01.00, Records, Retention, and Disposal, proposed revisions to TBR Policy 2.03.01.05, TCAT Academic Standards and Readmission, proposed program terminations, modifications, new technical program implementations for TCATs, and institutional mission profiles. As committee chair, I move that the board approve the report of the September 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Committee on Academic Policies and Programs in Student Life as presented.
Very good, thank you. And finally, to Regent Hatch for a report from Audit Committee on September 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit Committee met in regular session on September 1, 2020 to review and recommend approval of the following items: internal and miscellaneous audit reports, system-wide internal audit updates, fiscal year 2021 internal audit plans, new internal audit charter for Jackson State Community College, fiscal year 2020 year-end status reports, and proposed revisions to the audit committee charter. Madam Chair, this concludes my report of the September 1st, 2020 audit committee meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, Brian.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
what
sorry.
about external affairs?
Oh, and thank you. You were not on my script and I did not catch it. Regent Varlin, thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay. The External Affairs Committee met in regular session to review the following items: advancement strategy, government relations, and marketing and digital strategy. Madam Chair, this concludes my report of the September 22nd, 2020 meeting of the External Affairs Committee, and I ask for approval of the minutes.
Thank you very much. And it was a good meeting, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the highlights from yesterday too. So thank you. Brian, question to you. Since the committee chairs have offered approval in the form of a motion, may we take that as the motion to approve these, or do I need a separate approval motion?
Let's do a separate approval motion just to be sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. May we have a motion to approve the committee reports as presented this morning, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Prescott. And a second?
Second. Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing none, since we are meeting telephonically, we do now need to take a roll call vote, formal action on our committee reports, and I will turn it back to Sanja. The committee reports as presented this morning, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Prescott,
we've got feedback. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it was what I just said coming back. That was strange.
Yeah. Odd. But I wanted to make a formal apology, Vice Chair. The mistake was in the notes I sent you. I had put in personnel rather than external affairs. So we've gone ahead and included personnel in with that. So we will not need to take a motion down under new business. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. So we now have all the committees before us.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for my confusion as well. Thank you.
Well, Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Gill.
Aye.
Regent Goldsmith.
Aye.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Hatcher.
Aye.
Regent McEllier.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Aye.
And I believe Regent Shockey has joined us.
I have. Aye.
Thank you. Regent Varlin.
Aye.
Regent Wong.
Aye.
Thank you. And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you all very much. I'm coming back to Regent Varlin at this point to give her report on the Regents Award for Excellence in Philanthropy, please.
Yes, it is my honor to present this today. The Tennessee Board of Regents Award for Excellence in Philanthropy is a unique designation. It is given only to the most deserving and devoted philanthropists who generously support institutions throughout the TBR system. Today, I am honored to recognize the Weldon F. Osborne Foundation, who were nominated by Chattanooga State. The award was presented during a virtual ceremony on July 27th by Regent Weston Wong. The Weldon F. Osborne Foundation has truly made a difference in the lives of Chattanooga State students and within Chattanooga State's broader community. The Osborne Foundation has contributed more than $250,000 to the Chattanooga State Foundation since June of 2007, including $75,000 to split the 3-year annual cost of the $225,000 for achieving the Dream Student Success Network fee with the Tucker Foundation and the college. Most recently, Osborne contributed $50,000 to the Chattanooga State Foundation's Focus on Completion endowment, which was matched dollar for dollar and helped raise $223,542, mostly from individual donors, to support professional development and student success efforts that are evidence-based and proven to be effective in helping students graduate. It is noteworthy that currently 2 trustees of the Osborne Foundation currently serve on the Chattanooga State Foundation Board of Directors. Scott Mattice and Duffy Frank also volunteer on various committees. Scott currently chairs the Foundation's Investment Committee, and Duffy has served many years on the Dinner of First Scholarship Benefit Committee and helped raise money for the Health Science Center. Those are just some of the many highlights on why the Osborne Foundation reflects the spirit of excellence in philanthropy. The Weldon F. Osborne Foundation continues to uphold the founding mission established in 1959 for providing support for education, social, and welfare programs and public education nonprofits in the greater Chattanooga area. The Osborne Foundation is a prominent philanthropic leader in Chattanooga. Barbara Martar, Executive Director of the Osborne Foundation, accepted you the award on behalf of the Foundation during the virtual event. Congratulations to the Osborne Foundation on receiving the 2020 Regents Award for Excellence in Philanthropy, and thank you on behalf of the Tennessee Board of Regents. And now I'd like to ask Chattanooga State Community College President Dr. Rebecca Ashford for additional comments.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today. Thank you, Regent Varlin, for that wonderful description of the Osborne Foundation and the significant contributions they've made to Chattanooga State. Vice Chair Reynolds and all the members of the Board of Regents, thank you so very much for recognizing the Osborne Foundation for their excellence in philanthropy and for their contributions to Chattanooga State. The Osborne Foundation, through their contributions to our college, enabled us to be one of the very earliest Tennessee participants in the Achieving the Dream network. Without their contributions, the college simply would not have been able to participate. And being a member of Achieving the Dream has been a significant game changer on this campus in the way that we've been better able to support students and student success. Also, as Regent Varlin mentioned, we were able to leverage a one-to-one match for donations to an endowment that will enable us to continue with faculty and staff professional development and the implementation of student support mechanisms well into the future. And of course, I would be very remiss if I did not thank Chancellor Tidings for her visionary leadership during the time she was at Chattanooga State, Achieving the Dream to the college, and now for her visionary leadership in taking that initiative statewide and implementing it at the system level. So again, thank you for your time today and for recognizing the Osborne Foundation.
Thank you, President Ashford. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Regent Webb, I know you were there for the presentation. Do you have any comments?
Well, it's a strange world we live in, so I was not there, but I did pre-record a greeting all by myself at my house. But it was obviously grateful for what that foundation does in our community, and that they see the vision of both missions, that take place at, and really all 4. I mean, we forget this. Chattanooga State has 2 high schools and 2 colleges all on the same campus. A lot going on there.
Yeah, thank you. Vice Chair Reynolds, that concludes my report.
Very good. Well done. Thank you, Regent Wamp, for your comments. And to President Ashford, we appreciate you and all you do at Chattanooga State. So thank you. We are to the report of the Chancellor, who has given us permission to proceed, and then she will join us. Yesterday we talked workforce development. We talked about our operation, as Regent Wamp said, in these sort of strange and unusual times in which we find ourselves. We told our faculty and staff, as we always do, but certainly in these unusual times, how much we appreciate all they have done this year. And today we're going to pivot a little bit and go even more to our mission, and that's around our students and student success. So with that, as we wait for the Chancellor to join us, as we all know, we've got a we're in capable hands with Executive Vice Chancellor Russ Deaton, and I think he was going to make the presentation on the student access portion of today's report. So let's turn it over to Russ, and then we'll hear more from the Chancellor when she joins. So thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Vice Chair Reynolds, and to members of the board, good morning to you all. And Vice Chair Reynolds, you mentioned capable hands. This goes without saying, I hope, but a lot of the work you're going to see today is because of the capable hands of the research and data teams, both on the campuses and at TBR. Much of the data did not even come to TBR until about 1 week ago in its raw form, and so the team spent every day between then and now getting this ready, and so I applaud them for that. Normally at this juncture, of course, we would bring to you two pieces of the story, as you mentioned, Vice Chair Reynolds, both about our access mission, our open access mission, how we serve students, what our enrollments look like for this fall, kind of what does the road ahead look like, but also looking back at the completions from the last cycle. How many awards did we produce, what graduation rates are, what is student success broadly defined, and how can we measure it, in all the complex ways that fits to TBR. So, of course, we'll do that again today, but we're going to go a little bit deeper as well, largely because of the circumstances that we've encountered the last 7 months. There's some new information here, some of which actually came up this morning at the House Education Committee. The members were, of course, asking the right questions about what does access look like this fall? Did COVID have an impact on success last spring? What do demographic changes look like across higher education? Many of those questions we now have some answers to. So again, I want to anchor it in that framework. The visual, of course, here, one that you'll recognize, those of you who were with us last fall, excuse me, when we had the retreat, trying to draw in all the various moving parts across TBR into a schematic that, again, tries to reflect that open access mission that we are charged with by statute, and of course, the complexity of our mission, looking at things, graduation rates, transfers, workforce training, all host of outcomes. And members, I will, as I go through these slides, obviously, if you have questions, please stop and ask, whether you want to jump in verbally, put one in the chat, or raise your hand electronically. I'll also try to pause at a couple of junctures throughout this presentation to give us time to reflect and ask some questions. The framework today, again, is more around some just guiding questions. The data we're going to show you is, of course, just the language of the response. But the key to what we want to talk about today is what are some guiding questions that we think we ought to know in a deeper way about our students, about our system. What does our enrollment look like this fall? And does it, or does it not in some cases, reflect the communities that we are charged with serving? How has the pandemic affected that service? How have enrollments changed, if they have? And what do we see, what patterns emerge that will demand our attention going forward? We'll look back on Drive to 55. Still, we're at about the halfway point throughout that 10-year juncture where we're looking at bringing Tennesseans' educational attainment levels up to goals set by political leadership. And again, how do we think about success? How do we measure success? And how do we determine the causes of that success? And importantly, this is going to go, as it has in the past, beyond graduation rates, which again, we'll talk about today and is a very good metric for a type of student, but there's a lot more to our mission and to our success than just graduation rates. So to first get into enrollment and access and what has happened for this fall. Some of this, of course, has been communicated, but our enrollment this fall is down almost 12% from last fall. That's about 10,000 fewer students who are at our community colleges now compared to last fall. That roughly follows, if you take the long view of this, general downward trends since the end of the last Great Recession, though slight upward trends post-promise. But again, sort of a shock to the system to lose 10,000 students in the course of just 1 year. FTEs declined by 12%. As we track this throughout the semester, these numbers will rise ever so slightly as we do short-term courses, late start courses. A whole host of factors will inch these numbers upwards until we get to the end of term. This is, I think it's worth saying, members of the board, probably also produces the largest fiscal shock that our campuses have ever experienced. That even includes the Great Recession, when you had very different factors on the campus, federal money that was quite fungible. You had enrollment increases, tuition increases, none of which, of course, is present in these times. So this enrollment, of course, also producing one of the largest fiscal shocks we'll have on our campuses. To dig deeper into that enrollment, and again, we'll put this in sort of three broad buckets which capture a lot of that phenomenon, and we'll move left to right on this slide. First is dual enrollment, which for a large part of the summer, I think this bears mention. The state and our schools and many of us greatly concerned that dual enrollment would collapse because of both the remote learning in the K-12 sector and what higher ed was experiencing. That ended up only down about 9% from levels last year. That represents about 1,500 or so students out of that 10,000 student overall decline. In the middle section there, you see the first-time full-time freshmen. This is the right out most students who are coming to higher ed this fall. That number's down 19% from last fall. That is around 3,600 fewer students than we had at this point in time. That, in large part, unwinds a lot of the growth we had for Promise. Excuse me, not entirely, but the bulk of it. This will break this down further as we go, but this is a warning sign. This is a red flag. We also have later on in this presentation a look at what the demographics and the preparation levels of these declines look like and how we can detect which type of students we think are no longer matriculating at this point into higher education. And then on the right-hand side, adult enrollment, again, defined as 25 and up. So this is not quite the same as Reconnect, but it's just adult enrollment broadly defined via age. That is down 13% or 3,300 fewer students now than we had at this juncture last year. Again, this is somewhat intuitive when you think about the recession, you think about the complexity of remote learning with parents who have children at home who are going through school. That can explain a lot of the decline we think. A lot of that's intuitive. Not a causal relationship yet, but it's a quite intuitive thing to see about that decline. Looking a little bit deeper at the age distribution of that enrollment, and again, just community colleges at this juncture, some of the declines we see this fall follow longer term trends. And the general trend here you can see is that the older the student demographic is, the steeper the decline, generally speaking. So for instance, the dotted line there, the dual enrollment students, which starts out on the left-hand side at the bottom and then moves up over time, that's down again 9% from this past fall. Whereas the dark blue line near the bottom of the graph, those are our students aged 35 and older. That demographic is down 17% fall to fall. So again, we generally see students who just probably have more life complexity, again, jobs, kids, et cetera, their enrollments got hit harder this fall. Looking specifically at the new classes of Promise and Reconnect. On the left-hand side in blue is Promise. The new Promise applicants are down 6% from last fall. And again, this is somewhat expected given the 19% decline in the freshman class, but Promise only down 6% from last fall. That's only a few hundred students, probably about 800 students or so. Reconnect had a larger decline. So again, we see that same pattern where adult students enrollments are experiencing larger declines, typically speaking, than traditional age students. Reconnect is down 15% from last fall. So again, measurable declines in those new classes of students in both Promise and Reconnect. So some good news now. Now we're going to look at the freshman class from last fall and what is called the fall-to-fall retention rate of those students. So of a freshman class that starts every fall, what percentage come back to school in some form or fashion the next fall? This number historically has been in the low to mid 50% range, not as high as we want it to be. It has been range bound for about a decade now. And even with the smaller freshman class, even with the declines in adult students, with all the enrollment changes going on, fall to fall retention stayed healthy. It did decline by about a point, but that's, again, within range bound of where it typically is at about 54%. You do still see equity gaps. So, for instance, you see a gap between the first-year retention of Black students, which is around 44%, compared to white students, which is around 56%. You do not see a big gap between white students and Hispanic students. So the equity stories is complicated, having some gaps present in some cases, and in other cases, essentially seeing no gap. But overall, again, fall to fall retention from last year's freshmen coming back to school was steady, maintained at about 54%. TCAT enrollment, and again, let me stress the TCATs are starting their semester on a different calendar. They start September 1st. And we have yet to get their full data in, but they have a good news story to tell as well. They're up 3% from this time last year. Again, this sector, as you know, serves both a traditional age high school student who comes via promise, but also a host of adult students across a range of ages. So we do see some divergence here between adult enrollment at community colleges and the overall enrollment at TCATs, which again is up 3%. So that's a good part of our story. Now let's ask ourselves how that enrollment reflects who we serve. And this is where we can dig deeper into the census files from this fall to look at that enrollment to detect what exactly is going on across the sector. In general, before we get to the boxes here, in general, male enrollment is down more than female enrollment. And in general, Hispanic enrollment is the healthiest, white enrollment, and then Black enrollment. So the declines were more steep as you move across those three races and from women to men. Overall, though, if you look across the entirety of TBR community college enrollment, Black enrollment is down 19% from last fall. That's almost 3,000 students. And in particular, and again, this is cause for concern, Black male enrollment is down a quarter. It's down 24% from this point last year. And again, this is all students. We're going to dig into the freshman class here in a moment. But overall, across the entirety of the enrollment, Black male enrollment's down 24%. Women enrollment's down 9%. Men are down 15%. So again, we see differences by gender, differences by race. To give you a sense, members of the board, on the left-hand side, again, Black enrollment down 19%. Enrollment of white students is down 11%. Enrollment of Hispanic students is down only 4%. So we see some large divergence demographically in those enrollment declines. Now, if we then focus in on just that first-time full-time freshman, so this is just the mostly high school graduate emerging into our colleges this fall, again looking for demographic trends. On the left-hand side, breaking it down just by race, so that freshman class for white students, down 17%. For Black students, down 31%. Nearly a third of the Black student freshman class is not in our colleges this fall from last fall. Hispanic students down 18%. And when you then break that down further, again, more divergence among men and women, that same divergence by race. White women down 14%, white men down 20%. And then, importantly, again, cause for alarm. Black women from the freshman class is down 27%. Black men is down 35% year over year. That's about 1,000 of our Black high school graduates who are just not in our colleges this fall. It does not appear to be, and again, we need to do more work on our data for this, does not appear that they showed up at the TCATs in numbers sufficient to account for this decline. And of course, we would not know yet whether they emerged at university, something we'll need assistance from THEC to analyze the different distributions of freshmen across the higher education sectors throughout Tennessee to see if there were just simply a change in where they went to school rather than a decline in the college going rate. We also always ask this question, which is how does our freshman class, again, that recent high school graduate coming to our colleges, how well does that reflect the high school graduating class from the previous spring? So on the left-hand side, you can see the race and gender breakdown of the 2020 Tennessee high school class, 65,000 or so students. Of that group, about 65% are white, 23% black, roughly 50-50 male-female. If you look this fall, and again, at the enrollments we just saw, we are now 70% white and only 13% black. So we see some big changes between the high school class and our freshman class. Now, to give some context there, pre-COVID, the black student percentage was in the mid-teens, around 15 to 16%. So we've not always reflected the high school class, but we've seen deterioration in that number over this fall 2020. And our enrollment still follows the male-female gap, where we see more women attending college than men. Again, typically we see about 57% of our freshman class that is women. Now about 59% are women. So some changes that we've seen due to the changes of the freshman class. So digging deeper into those broader buckets we mentioned earlier. First, dual enrollment. There was incredible divergence across the schools in dual enrollment changes. You can see in blue some of the schools that actually had increases in their dual enrollment headcount year over year from fall 19, Motlow State, Volunteer State, Chattanooga. We also saw some large declines, Roane and Pellissippi, double-digit declines, as well as Nashville. Southwest, though, down 37% in dual enrollment year over year. A lot of things could be going on here. This could be somewhat random by school. It's very idiosyncratic, of course, based on the school. It could also be, though, the local and regional conditions of both the pandemic and the economy and how they impact enrollment across the board at these schools. It's difficult to draw sort of, conclusions at this point, members of the board, but it's things we're looking into to see if we can detect and perhaps explain what is causing these divergence of these numbers across our schools. Another key factor, and those of you that remember our promise work the last 4 or 5 years will remember that we look intently at the academic preparation levels of the freshman class to look for new types of students who are coming in, to get a clue about their preparation levels, which of course translates into a factor in their overall success, as well as things like learning support, etc. This is also an area where overall averages can be deceiving. For instance, if you just simply asked us, is the average ACT and GPA of this year's freshmen, did it go up or down from last fall? Both metrics went up, which of course would not tell the whole story. What you're seeing here on top is the ACT distribution of our freshmen last year in blue, this year in red. And again, we are down about 3,600 freshmen, but you can even just see visually, without me getting into the numbers, a lot of the declines are in that 15 to 19 to 20 ACT range. That's where that gap between the blue last fall and the red this fall is the greatest. We still see some numerical declines in the larger ACT scores, but it's really in those marginally prepared students that we see the largest declines. We lost a quarter of our students who have an ACT score below of 19. That population is down by a quarter. And a similar trend follows on GPA. And again, in general, the better prepared you are, the less damage was done to your enrollment chances for this fall. In that line graph at the bottom, you'll notice for those students who have at the bottom a 3.6 to a 4.0 plus GPA, we more or less held steady with that group. There was a very small decline in the number of students with that profile. However, if you look at students who had less than a 3.0 GPA, those students dropped by 30% year over year. So again, not sure if it's a issue with the state's college going rate retracting some. There is a chance they went on to other higher education sectors, but definitely we see some dramatic declines by preparation profile across our students. Now let's look at the modality of instruction. And again, this is one that we've talked about as a group for really since COVID began. And it's the dramatic shift that the Chancellor spoke about again this morning from what was largely a traditional in-person modality, where roughly 70% or so of all of our instruction was delivered in person, which then suddenly had to, of course, flips both last spring and flipped this fall into a largely online and hybrid formats. You can see the numbers of students by headcount who had different modalities by year. And again, the solid blue bar is the conventional or the in-person instruction, and the reds are online or hybrid, which basically just flipped positions. Whereas now, well over half of our students are exclusively taking online courses. The vast majority are taking almost all online courses, largely, of course, because nearly everything we're offering this semester is in a hybrid or online modality. Only about, we estimate, roughly 15 to 20% are in person at all. So, about to take a pause here. So as we look at access, the open access mission, our enrollments this fall, again, the key takeaways here: overall enrollment, again, down almost 12% at the community colleges, but enrollment preliminarily looks to be up at TCATs. Among the recent high school graduates, that enrollment decline was steeper at our community colleges, down 19%, particularly pronounced among certain subpopulations, Black men in particular, and those in lower bands of the ACT score. Dual enrollment in adults also were facing pressure, and we also saw, again, a dramatic change in the modality, switching, of course, to a largely online and hybrid format. Let me take a pause here, members of the board, to see if there are any questions or comments before we hit into the second half of this material. So now, as we move into the student success portion, let's start with TBR records, which is we have awarded a record number of credentials in 2019-20. On the right-hand side, you see the blue bars. Our community colleges awarded 15,874 credentials throughout the 1920 academic year. That is, as the Chancellor said this morning, 6% growth over last year, and that beats our previous record set 2 years ago. This is, of course, within a declining enrollment environment, and not just declines this fall, of course, but in a long-term enrollment decline, we're producing more awards with a shrinking population, which is a good part of our story. As you look at how those awards break down, again, these trends follow both nationwide and our historical precedent. The majority are going to women, about 55%, and the average age of graduates is well into the upper 20s, so about 41% of our graduates are adults. And the demographics of our graduates more poorly reflect who we serve than even enrollment. Only 10% of our graduates are Black or African American. Important to note, too, members of the board, we talk a lot about the different types of credentials, both certificates, as well as the applied associate's degrees and the associates designed for transfer. The left-hand side of this chart shows you that breakdown, and the top two bars in red are those degrees designed for transfer, the highest profile of which usually is the Tennessee transfer pathways, by statute designed to fully articulate the entirety of both the gen ed sequence and the 19 courses in the major into a university. But only about less than half of students who get that credential in community colleges are on that TTP. The others are just more in a general transfer degree that is not in the TTP. The reasons for this are unclear, but something that we will be digging into in the months ahead. Awards at TCATs, and again, the TCATs continue to build on their success. They awarded about 7,000 credentials this past year, putting TBR's grand total at about 23,000 awards, again, a record for our system. And the TCATs continue to have extraordinarily high completion rates, job placement rates, and licensure pass rates, all of which are 80+%. So as we think about the Drive to 55 goal, and this was a question that the members of the House Education asked this morning as well, and recall the context here is important. 2 years ago, at Governor Haslam's urging, this board moved our targets higher because we were already essentially meeting them. We pushed our goals more aggressively out, and we were the only higher ed sector that had the privilege of doing so. Across community colleges now, we are tantalizingly close to meeting that Drive to 55 target here in the year 2020. You can see the blue number looking at our overall unique graduate counts, with the red slice that we still have yet to attain. On the TCAT side, of course, them being so countercyclical with the economy and already having very healthy success rates, a bit of a larger gap between current graduates and their goal, but we still think by the year 2025, TBR will have done its part and then some to meet the state's Drive to 55 goal. Now, stepping back, measuring student success, how we think about it, what's appropriate for TBR, and introducing potentially some new metrics for us to think about. But first is a traditional one, the graduation rate. And again, this is just going to measure a first-time full-time freshman class and look 3 years out, which is sort of a national standard of way of looking at it, to detect how many have graduated after 3 years. We have, as this board knows, historically moved that number up quite a bit. It is still way lower than we want it to be, but the progress here has been steady and real. We've moved that grad rate from 14% about 7 years ago to the 2017 cohort being at about 25%, tying the record we set last year. The progress here did plateau, could be for a variety of reasons. We began to see some early signs of this in the retention and gateway completion rates of that freshman class, how they had begun to plateau. But nonetheless, 25% had graduated, which again is the highest, tied with last year that TBR has ever had. Several schools worth mentioning that have 30+% graduation rates, particularly Motlow, Northeast, Walters, and Roane State. However, that story also has another layer, of course, which is the equity gap within graduation rates. If you were to break down graduation rates by race, you see not only historical gaps, but actually a widening gap in 2020. The white student graduation rate, again, over 3 years, is right at 29%. That's the gray bar there on top, the dashed line. Hispanic students, about 23%. So the white Hispanic gap is smaller. Black student graduation rate is around 11%. It actually declined last year from 12%, and thus the gap has widened. This is, of course, an animating principle for TBR to try to find ways to solve that equity gap across every demographic we see, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's income. But we have a particularly long way to go on this one. To give you a sense of what that would take to put in number terms, this is what's in the blue box on the right. We would need an additional 614 students, black students, who graduate from that cohort to equalize and close the graduation rate gaps by race. So we have some ground to make up there. Of course, academic preparation is one of the key inputs into graduation rates, not the only one by any means, of course, but we see a very strong relationship between preparation and success. If you were to, here on the left, to graph graduation rates just simply by ACT score, you see that as the ACT score improves, the odds of graduation go up, and they go up markedly. That's even more true on GPA, which is probably a more closely linked metric to success than even as ACT score. The odds of graduation with those students with a 3.0 or above, about 40%. And without that GPA, students are going to really struggle to do that work in college. And we can see the impact of preparation. This is a durable finding we see in nearly every graduation rate analysis that we do. This board also knows that we don't stop there. We have tended to look at graduation beyond just the 3 years, primarily because students don't stop graduating at 3 years. They continue their studies onward, and we want to track that until we can't see it anymore. As we have done so, we've developed this chart. So what you're looking at here is it's taking a freshman cohort and simply counting the number of semesters throughout time with the graduation rate. So for instance, the bottom lines of that chart, the bottom two cohorts are actually kind of on top of each other, 2009, 2010. If you track those freshman classes semester by semester, and every 3 semesters is an academic year, therefore at 9 semesters, you see a 3-year graduation rate. You can see their graduation rate at about 14, 15%, like we just saw. But as you track them over time, again, they keep working, and eventually that graduation rate tops out for that 2010 cohort at about 25%. That's what's on the far right-hand side of that graph. Excuse me. And then the other lines on that graph, as you see us layering on additional cohorts year by year, what you see is, again, an acceleration of that graduation rate over time. You see both improvements right out of the gate at around 2 years, especially at the 3-year mark where we have that vertical line drawn. And again, over time, where students continue to graduate from our colleges even after that 3-year mark. So much so that the 2014 cohort, which is now through 6 full years, is at a 31% graduation rate, where 5 years prior, those cohorts had about a 22% graduation rate. So again, improvements over time. Lastly, on this slide, if you can see on the far left-hand side, we have put on here the 2018 cohort, which is only 2 years into their schooling, of course, but they've already graduated at a 16% rate, which is the highest 2-year rate we've ever had. So if these trends hold, that 3-year graduation rate for that cohort this time next year, we hope, will be higher than even 25% and set a new record for us. Homing in specifically on Tennessee Promise, and again, this is a slide familiar to some of you who have been looking at this data before. We are now tracking Tennessee Promise, of course, across 5 semesters, which is the eligibility window the state provides for Promise. We'll go through those 3 cohorts of Tennessee Promise and starting in 2015, as well as a comparison cohort for 2014. And we'll also then layer on here not only the graduates, but also those who have transferred successfully and those still enrolled in our schools. That's what's in blue. As you look across those 5 semesters, Tennessee Promise students are succeeding. So again, enrollment plus transfer plus graduation at about a 50% clip after 5 semesters, 51% in the 2017 cohort. Again, we have seen this trend develop the last 4 or 5 years. It is a success story about Tennessee Promise. Hope to have the numbers even go higher, but that cohort of students is doing quite well. Getting near the end, I want to introduce a new metric that will focus in on a particular aspect of the TBR mission that heretofore we haven't really been able to develop some metrics for. And so before we even get into the data, let me kind of describe for you the idea here, and then we'll kind of jump into this slide. So a key part of the TBR mission, of course, is to welcome and accept inbound transfers, those students who transfer into a TBR school from somewhere, whether it's a private university, a public university, even out of state. That's a key part of what we do. It's a little more difficult because the intent is a little fuzzy. Are they transferring back to us to simply get their feet underneath them before they move back to university to complete their credentials? Or have they changed their academic goals to be an associate's degree or a certificate? Those are difficult things to understand, but nonetheless, we wanted to capture that student activity and detect where we see success. So on this chart, what we've done was, over the course of 7 years, we looked at every inbound transfer student into a community college that came from outside our system. And that was around 52,000 students over those 7 years. That's a lot of students. We then looked at, well, let's then probe just those students who were a freshman at a Tennessee Public University first. So for instance, if right out of high school you go to East Tennessee State University, and then after a year you transfer to Northeast State Community College, we wanted to essentially capture what happens to that student from that point forward, whether she graduates from Northeast, whether she then gets more credit hours and transfers back to a university to graduation. Our graduation rates currently don't capture her, but this does. So what you're then seeing here is the success rates of those students. And let's move left to right. If you only look at a 3-year window, and this would assume that their intentions are just to get a TBR credential, not to transfer back to a university. If you look at that group total, 17% of them graduated from a TBR college. If you account for them graduating from any Tennessee institution, universities as well, it's 24%. So again, 24% of those inbound transfers to us who were freshmen at a Tennessee university previously had then graduated anywhere after 3 years. But to capture more fully that intent question, which is some of them definitely want to come back to a community college, Perhaps they're dealing with academic challenges or life challenges. They get things under control, then they successfully transfer back to a university. We give them then the full 6 years to get that university credential. That's where the far right-hand side shows that graduation rate is 39%. So those students coming back to us for inbound transfers are graduating at about almost a 40% rate when we look at the entirety of the higher education universe. Finally, last section here, members of the board, what do we know about the causes of success? This one is, of course, mission critical because of the modality that we've had to move to because of COVID. If we were to look at these course successes in online courses compared to traditional in-person courses. So this is a student who, course by course, earns a passing grade, both in an online course compared to an in-person course. And we compare those two rates, breaking that down by race, by Pell status, by ACT, etc. This is what we see. So let's move right to left on this one. So overall, traditionally in fall 19, and we'll have to watch this in fall 20, we saw 79%, that's the number in blue on the right-hand side, 79% of students in courses in person were successful, got a passing grade, compared to 73% in an online course. If you then break that down by ACT, Pell status, age, or race, we still see sort of a durable 5 to 7 point gap, no matter the demographic, in an online course versus an in-person course. This is due to potentially a lot of factors: technology challenges, preparation challenges, life circumstances. There's a lot going on here that could cause these results. We saw this quite a bit. Board members, you'll remember from June when we surveyed our faculty about the challenges they faced in the spring. They mentioned both their own and students' challenges in an online environment, technical challenges, learning challenges. This will be an important metric going forward to try to close that gap, given the prevalence of online courses that we have this fall and potentially into the future. And finally, wanted to describe for you a survey that TBR has long done, but we've just now really dug in a little more deeply. And it's a survey that looks at students' life circumstances and also their attitudes and engagement with the various aspects of a campus, advising, financial aid, etc. We survey those students every year. And those of you who are watching are familiar, it's the CESI survey, Community College Student Engagement Survey. And the survey asked them several questions, both demographically about how much they work, do they care for dependents, what are their commute times like, a whole host of other questions. We then took those surveys, which we've long analyzed at that level, but importantly this year, we then linked them up to our student records and tried to then match up the results we saw from that survey with student retention and graduation. That's what's shown on here. So the top right-hand side just gives you a descriptive sense of how students responded to that survey. More than 3/4 of our students are working while they're in college. That's not a surprise to us. We've long known that. But about 62% work more than 20 hours a week, more than half-time work. That's an extraordinarily high number. And about 52% are currently caring for a dependent. As we then link up those features with retention and graduation, and again, there's a lot of math that goes behind this, but the bottom line is what's on the bottom, which is that some of this is intuitive, but the more time spent caring for dependents, the longer your commute is to school, and if you are indeed working while you're going in school, all of those have a negative effect on many outcomes we can measure: time to graduation, GPA, odds of getting a credential, etc. Again, some of that's intuitive, but it puts numbers to it for us to begin to then go back and look at, well, what could be associated with increasing graduation rates? And that's where that engagement part comes in. As students respond to that survey telling us how often they visited with an advisor, how often they discussed transfer, how often they got financial aid counseling, we can take those answers and again, link them to retention and graduation and see where we can make headway on student success. For instance, the more likely you are to visit an advisor, the more deeply that engagement, the more likely you are to get better grades and to graduate. So to wrap this entire thing up, so again, key takeaways, record number of credentials for the last academic year, both at the community colleges and TBR as a whole. Graduation rates holding steady at 25%, but extraordinarily high equity gaps, which actually widened a little bit between Black and white students this past fall. And then online course success rates, we have historically seen a gap between in-person and online courses that's even more pronounced going forward. And again, relates to what this board considered yesterday, which is an investment in improving online instruction and access. And finally, just the role that students' life circumstances and personal circumstances play in their success. All of these, of course, lead to future research projects. Members of the board, we have been lucky to receive external support to pursue these questions in more depth, whether it's the decline in adult enrollment, about improving learning support and co-requisite remediation for our students, or to look at the connections between workforce and higher education. We have active projects on all of those, again, with support from foundations to help us pursue those questions to connect research and data to interventions. With that, members of the board, I'd be happy to answer questions about any of this or other questions you may have.
Questions from the board? Or Chancellor, do you have any thoughts before we go to questions?
No, I just applaud our research team and the great work that they've done analyzing our graduates and our new class that we have coming in. You can see that we've got work to do, but it's nice to know where the areas are that we need to be working on. This is something Dr. McCormick and I were just texting with each other that we really need to share this with the House Higher Ed group as well. Some of the questions they were asking this morning are very pointedly answered in this research that we've done. So I think it gives us a good direction to kind of be headed down. You saw the areas where we know we have lost students, and we know we need to be very cognizant in trying to solve some of those. We do have some pieces of the puzzle in place, but we're not there. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do in this arena. COVID has impacted that. We know these numbers are going to look a little bit different as we move into our post-COVID era and we begin to analyze, but we've got to adjust for all students to help them be more successful. So thank you to Russ and Amy and the entire team for the great job you did in putting this together.
So, and because this is so much excellent and voluminous information, Sanja has sent to everybody a copy of Russ's slides. They'll also be on the website, of course, but now you have it in your own inbox. I guess, are there questions out there? Oh, Dr. Goldsmith has a question. Very good. And then Regent Prescott, and Regent Green. Okay.
Well, it's more of a comment. I think one thing the public doesn't understand that we transfer a lot of students to four-year institutions. When I first came to Chat State, I thought it was all career programs. So that's a really important number and a purpose that we have, which I don't think we communicate out well or as well as we could. But when I was listening to what Russ was saying, it also seems that if we drill down even further, not that his data was going there, but it seems like we probably have a lot of small or what I would call dead programs. And from a structural perspective, we're going to have a lot of faculty. If we keep increasing awards but decreasing student enrollment, which the trend line has been, it does seem like a review, and I realize this is probably not at the board level, but it seems like we may have a lot of programs we don't need to deliver anymore. And associated with that, we might need less faculty. And then the other thing I'll comment, and then I'll just see if anyone has any other feedback, is it also seems that we may be in a reverse trend line where we may have to go back to the old purpose of the Tennessee eCampus when it was like RODP, which is maybe offer fully online programs where the student doesn't have to register at a particular school or something, and say, if we have this large cadre of transfer students, maybe a fully online program for them that just comes out of TBR, so to speak, as opposed to out of a particular institution, maybe creating a real online campus that's independent of an institution to say, maybe we can service our students better statewide if they don't have to go say, okay, I have to take a class here and I take making sure that these transfer students in particular have a really solid option where they don't have to fight for an English comp class on a particular campus. I'm just thinking structurally, it opens up a lot of interesting questions that we can discuss over time. And I really appreciate the presentation, Russ. The stats are really what we need to make informed decisions. And each time I hear you talk, they get better. So I really appreciate it.
Excellent comments and lots of food for thought. I think Regent Prescott was next, Regent Green, and I believe Regent Hatch has his hand up. So we'll go in that order.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Reynolds. First of all, I just want to echo the Chancellor in complimenting Dr. Deaton and his team, Amy and her crew, because this is what we are about, and they do a tremendous job of collecting data, and then they go a step further in trying to determine, where we go from there. One of the comments I'd like to make, and I think we may forget this because of COVID and et cetera, but we are in the process of a strategic planning, effort. And so I would hope that, and I'm assuming that this data will inform our strategic plan as we go forward. Because strategic planning is about your situation today and what you want it to be tomorrow. So we really do need to, when we started that, the situation as it is may have been different and was different than what it is now. So I think we really, it's important to have this information, and it's important for us to use it. It also seems that, the decrease in our number of students is kind of matching the decrease in terms of the number of students who are not prepared, which on the one hand you think, okay, then we have more students in here that are prepared, that's good. But from our point of view of our state, it's those students that we need so much to prepare for the workforce. I mean, that, the students that we're losing, I'm just, horrified of, what are they doing, and what, why are we losing them? And so there, I think that's really important for us to look at. I think it's important for us to think about our relationship. I say this nearly every meeting with K-12 because, the students that we get out of high school, we've got to have, and we've got some partnerships that really are doing well there with sales and so forth. But I'm, again, sad that we hadn't been able to do the same thing with the language arts. But we have to keep looking at that. I think that's the reason we have K-12 represented on this board. I wish we'd have that presence so that we can, talk with them. I think that's important. So at the risk of just pontificating, I will now shut up. But I do think that this data is extremely important to us, and we have to be concerned about the students and the disparity in terms of the students that are not with us, because that's what our mission is about. So excellent work, Russ. Your team is just amazing. They really like this. When I see Amy in committee meetings, she's always smiling and looking so happy. She really,
yes, she is.
She really loves digging into this data. But congratulations on our successes, increasing our graduation and so forth. But as the Chancellor said, we have some work to do, and I trust totally that we can do it.
Regent Green?
Yeah, I was also going to just applaud Russ's team for putting in the work. It pulls me back to a meeting that we had not too long ago where you have to start with awareness, assessment before you can take action. And so understanding where these hurdles are super important. I've got two questions. One is, that there's been obviously COVID money allocated on a lot of different parameters. And I think some of that COVID money is affiliated with having time frames. Given that we've got this information and this is not going to be an immediate, hey, let's go ahead and boost our distance learning. Let's get, remote access there. Do we have the ability to reallocate some of those COVID funds or to this effort in kind of rebounding our student enrollment and trying to, knock out these hurdles?
Regent Green, it's a good question, and I may need some help from Vice Chancellor Gibbs on some of the CARES Act funding, but I know it can directly address a lot of the hurdles we see. For instance, where we see technology challenges, a lot of that money went to address that problem directly, getting our faculty trained and ready to be in an online environment, getting students ready. A lot of it went directly for things like that. So that's a key part of what it can do, but did do in the spring and can do in the future to address the challenges we see in this data.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And the technology to Regent Goldsmith's point before, making it easier for students to be able to attend is always great. But there's also the factor of making sure we're getting the message to all of these hurdles that we're trying to get with the disparities with race and men and women, et cetera. Just making sure that we have, it may be more of a marketing plan. It might be more of a community direct, reach out, not just saying, hey, blanketly, we provided greater access to attend school. It may be a more focused approach. So just curious on how some of those CARES funds can help kind of, bridge that gap.
And it bears mentioning too, Regent Green, that under the leadership of the Department of Education and THEC, the state has been convening a whole host of partners to directly address the pipeline and the gaps we see. And they're thinking beyond just the dollars. It's more about what can we do with our shoe leather to really get out there and work students and work high schools and get them back into the pipeline. TX spoke about that this morning about next fall students, and it's also true for this fall students. So it's obviously it's beyond just money, but it's also a lot of what can we do from an enrollment standpoint, an outreach standpoint, marketing that you'll hear more about. And again, this is in many cases, this is the engine of the entire strategic enrollment management effort that Dr. Lemming and others are leading. That's exactly what that was designed to address. So you're right on point.
Got it. Awesome. That's all. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Now, why don't we go to Joey and then Miles, if you will follow on. I think those are my next two hands up.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So Russ, first of all, thanks for a great presentation. For some reason, every time I see you present, I feel smarter. So thanks for that. You do a great job. And now here's my question. When I was at Nashville State a half century or so ago, I got about 90% of the hours I needed to get a 2-year degree, and then I transferred. And there were a couple of dozen folks that I hung around with that did similarly. All of them graduated from their 4-year colleges, and I suspect Nashville State got, no credit for that. So are there regulations in place that prevent that, or is it a tracking mechanism, or how can that contribute to some of the community college work when these folks are going on and graduating?
It's a great question, and to put some parameters around the discussion. So in that situation, that student who were to transfer from Nashville to say MTSU and graduate only from MTSU, that would eventually get back into our graduation rate for Nashville, because we'll look for graduates anywhere we can find them, even if they're not at TBR colleges. Of course, the timing of transfer is always an issue. I think all of the state policy and all of our rhetoric is let's get the credential first before that happens. If not, there is the reverse transfer option, whereby you transfer before you've completed the associate's degree, and then along the way at the university, you took the correct hours that would have been the 2-year degree. You basically reverse articulate them back, and you get the credential, and you keep pursuing your bachelor's degree. We do about almost 800 or so of those a year. So that's another way to address that mechanism, which is useful for students in case they never then get the bachelor's degree. They do have something to show for their work. So a lot of moving parts there. But again, it would go back into our data for wherever they were at first-time freshmen. It would contribute back to their graduation rates. But the credential would not, as you note. And the credential is the only part of that counts in the outcomes formula. Graduation rates are not a factor for our colleges, and that's a key point.
Okay, thanks.
I was going to say, Joy, they count as a transfer student for us. We get to count them as that, but they don't count as a graduate for us.
So
unless they do reverse.
After 47 years, could I go now and get my diploma from Nashville State?
It's never too late. Never too late.
That's good to know.
Miles?
Yes, thank you. Good job, Russ. Now's the time to give yourself a raise, by the way. I saw the data about counselors, how helpful they are to student success. Do we have enough counselors? Do we need more counselors? Is there money for more counselors?
You know,
we need more counselors.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. And I was going to say, I hope I don't get out in front of you, Dr. Tading, so that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
No, we need more counselors, and that point was kind of hit home again with the House this morning. Mike Krause is singing that song for us as well now. He understands. He's seeing very clearly what the counselors do for our students. And so we hope that eventually we will get funded. We did use some of the CARES money to put in additional support counselors for our students. But Regent Green, as you alluded, there is a timeline on that money. It does expire, and we can't use it for advertising. So we're not able to go out and recruit with that money, but we put things in place that we hoped would shore up a college and get students through the pipeline as quickly as we could, and at some point be sustaining. But we do have to spend that money. The majority of that money needs to be spent by the end of the year.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Comments? Oh, thanks. Thank you, Regent Burdine. I do have one question, and particularly related to the equity and diversity issues, and those gaps are shocking in many ways, and I know it's a continuing challenge for us. But are we sharing this data with our ATD friends as we're working on achieving the dream together? And if so, and I know it may be premature to say they've reacted to it, but how can that data be used in our ATD efforts amongst all of our campuses?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is the data that ATD requires us to pull, because this is what we have to drill down into to understand what's happening with students. As Regent Green alluded to, we have to know what we have before we can fix any of what we have. And so ATD and all the plans that they drill down to on the individual colleges, this is how they begin to put processes in place to help shore that up.
Good. Anyone else? Well done. I think you've articulated our successes and our opportunities and challenges before us. And to Regent Prescott's point, we are, as we're able to reinvigorate the strategic planning process, this is an incredibly useful tool going forward. So thank you, Russ and company and Chancellor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chancellor, I'm going to turn this back to you and see if there are any other highlights you want to provide from the morning. And then from there, if you want to pick back up on campus safety and security and our presentation on marketing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I apologize to each of you for being late this morning. That did go a little bit longer than what we had anticipated, but not as long as it went yesterday for the Commissioner of K through 12. So I was thankful for that. She was there for 4 hours. I just, as a quick update, if you didn't watch the presentation this morning, I think Director Krause did a great job in talking about the system or the state as a whole for higher ed. Talked about some good things that were happening with us, with the Tennessee Board of Regents. I started out giving them an update on what we had done planning for COVID. all the information that each of you have seen in our updates that you've been receiving every other day, and let them know where we were in regard to enrollment for this term, that we were down, that we did have some challenges that we were going to need to really try to pull ourselves out of. Well received by the group. We did get some offers of actual support after the meeting was over. Several of the representatives said that they would do everything they could to help us. So that was good. It is an honor for me at this time to turn it over to Dr. McCormick for her to talk to you about what's happening with campus safety and security. And Dr. McCormick, are you wearing your badge for this part of the presentation?
No, Chancellor, I'm sorry. I left that at home. I'm in the car, but I'll make sure I have it next time. So, but anyway, good afternoon to you, Chancellor Tidings, Vice Chair Reynolds, and members of the board. Today I come before you to explain the efforts across the state to unify and strengthen the ability to keep TBR campuses safe and secure. As you all know, we put forth a request for funding for a police chief at the central office and for officers on each of our TCATs. That actually made it into the budget, the first round. And as you know, with COVID, there were budget cuts and that was removed. So hopefully in the future, we will have a real sheriff or a real police chief, director of security at TBR. But in the meantime, I have been working to coordinate our efforts. As you know, the community college police chiefs have embraced the TCATs in their respective areas to assist them with training needs so that all campuses are prepared. And the mission of the community college police chiefs and safety and security directors is really dedicated to protecting our students, staff, and property of the educational institutions. And the purpose is to provide well-trained professionals that safeguard all individuals on the campuses and the campus communities. Also, as you know, in early July, Governor Lee announced an interagency partnership, including multiple departments across the state, organizations, and this partnership intends to enhance the policies and to improve information sharing and to also increase officer training. And also we found from the governor's release that the post commission will be requiring annual in-service training on de-escalation techniques, officers' duty to intervene, public assembly interaction, and emphasizing positive community and officer interactions and relationships. Also, that law enforcement partnership has the priorities of the actual police departments across the state reviewing their policies on use of force and also on officers' duty to intervene. I am pleased to report that all of our campus police agencies have provided certification to the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police, TACP, leadership, and this indicates full compliance with use of force and duty to intervene policy review. And these certifications will be provided to the governor's office through the association. TBR, through a development of the basically the task force or committee that is comprised of all of our police chiefs under the leadership of their committee chair this year, which is Chief Kane, have built and trained on what we call the TBR 5 training pillars. Those were developed in conjunction with Chancellor Tidings and Vice Chair Reynolds. And the pillars are: number 1, which is just, fair, and equitable policing; 2, community engagement and outreach; 3, de-escalation strategies; 4, use of force; and 5, safety of faculty, staff, students, and officers in a pandemic environment. Again, utilizing a model that was established by the TBI training officers, Police Chief Kane, who's from Roane State Community College, by the way, facilitated weekly virtual meetings with community college police chiefs, security directors, TCAT leadership under the leadership of President Carol Pereira, and other affiliated people with the campus safety and security. And we appreciate so much Chief Kane's expertise and leadership with this charge. And again, I'm pleased to report that all institutions met the training deadline that we set for them, which was before school started, which was August 15th of 2020. For awareness of the training the community college officers have received, Chief Kane also held informational sessions for community college academic representatives, including deans, directors of criminal justice programs and law enforcement academies, as well as TCAT representatives from each campus, which were either the campus president or his or her designee. And again, this initiative also had a 100% participation rate. And then finally, all campus police departments have also completed the following campus safety and security annual training, which is responder wellness during COVID, officer safety, COVID-19 roll call training, and breaking the chain, preventing the spread of surface contamination. So these chiefs have gone from never meeting on a regular basis to having a very, very tight group, working group. They will continue to meet permanently bi-monthly to share resources and best practices. And we hope that in the near future, we will be able to get that police chief, chancellor, and Vice Chair Reynolds, and also those officers on the campuses of TCATs. Chancellor, that is all I have regarding campus safety and security. Unless there are questions, I'll move on to introducing the next segment.
Okay, Dr. McCormick, thank you so much for that. Do we have any questions on our campus safety and security? Okay, well, if not, Dr. McCormick, if you would please take off your police chief's hat and put on your marketing and digital strategy hat for us now.
Okay, I'll put on my Tammy TCAT mascot costume. So in just a moment, Associate Vice Chancellor Matthew Gann is going to be doing a presentation on our marketing that we have been doing across the state over the past few months. As you know, each of our campuses have their own marketing department, our community college campuses, and the TCATs don't. They have to, their presidents and leadership do everything they can, and they also spend a lot of time with Matthew Gann and consultation. But again, they have their own marketing programs that market their colleges. But what Matthew is going to present to you is the overall system marketing, where he promotes, basically they promote awareness of our colleges, and what we will see, and hope I don't steal the thunder of Matthew's program, but what we will see from the data is awareness is there. People are seeing and we're seeing our colleges and who they are and what they do. So at this point, I'd like to turn everything over to Matthew to do that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick. Give me 1 second to share this presentation. All right. Again, thanks, Dr. McCormick, for that. Madam Vice Chair, Chancellor, Regents. One, it's great to see everybody for a change, and I'm glad to make this update. And I'm here to give a brief update on the marketing efforts, specifically advertising over the last 2 years. Kind of what our team works as an agency model. We coordinate ad buys, assist our colleges with strategic direction. We provide creative and design services specifically to the technical colleges. And we do manage the system's web properties, including all of the TCAT websites. And before I jump into the update, I want to acknowledge my team, who all have a passion for our work and making sure Tennesseans have access to education and understand that they have access to that education. I would also like to thank Dr. Deaton's team and the data they provide to us to help us actually navigate and plan our work. So from an advertising and outreach perspective, our department promotes the concept and brand of and technical colleges and the opportunities they provide to both secondary students and adults. And the brand is the way we as an organization or an individual is perceived by those who experience it. More than a name, it's more than a term, a design, a symbol. A brand is really a recognizable feeling that our colleges evoke to the general public. And then brands live in the mind. They live in the minds of everybody who experiences them. That is the prospective students, the existing students, the industry that we work to serve. the employees that we have, and potential faculty that we're trying to recruit, media, legislators, and even more. And so simply put, brands are those perceptions. And we work to inform prospective students that opportunities exist in their communities. We also work to change any existing misperceptions of community and technical colleges and try to elevate the idea of our colleges and eliminate that stigma of community and technical colleges. It's essentially that idea that quality wasn't at community and technical colleges for many years. We're trying to eliminate that stigma. I think it was mentioned before with the pathways that this is quality education that can lead to a certificate or diploma, but it could also lead to a 4-year or plus degree. And we also work with government relations and advancement to educate and inform state and national influencers and decision makers about our colleges and our centers, such as Carol Freer's Center for Workforce Development in Murfreesboro and Smyrna, and the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning, which is something, it's a group effort with Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Lemming. And the impact of our colleges make to the economic success of Tennessee and the communities our colleges serve. So our work is even more critical during COVID-19 times. As Dr. Deaton mentioned earlier, we're a community college. Enrollment is down in Tennessee and also down nationally. And so over the past 2 years, we've ran 4 distinct ad campaigns. Starting in early 2019, we launched the Career in a Year to promote programs that can be completed in a year or less. We followed that campaign with My Career Started, which was a series of alumni testimonials from our community and technical colleges. This year, we ran How We Do Summer Classes, which was a geo-targeted campaign enticing university students to take summer classes online through Tennessee eCampus. And finally, we finished our advertising strategy or shifted our advertising strategy at the beginning of COVID-19 and developed When You're Ready, followed by Don't Put Off Your Future, which is a combined effort. And for the sake of this presentation, some of the metrics are combined as the campaigns overlapped, and we planned and measured those campaigns together. And so how we measure our efforts here with the key performance indicators and metrics against the industry benchmarks. We monitor these KPIs through the entirety of the campaign and make adjustments if certain metrics are lagging, or we can tell a message really isn't resonating with our audiences, and we can tell that in a few ways. And so I am going to give into some numbers, but I want to kind of explain some of the way we measure before we get into those numbers. And then some tactics that we can't measure, action items such as outdoor and TV. We rely on general impressions and consider those brand awareness metrics. We can also attribute certain other successes based on those impressions, such as web views and retargeting. And so we kind of start off with impressions and exposure, just the views of our ads. Clicks are when people click on our actual digital ads and take action against a video, possibly. Our view-through rates are post-exposure behavior that can be expressed in site visits or on-site events or conversions. Some of you may notice, like in the past, we've done Tennessee Promise geofence campaigns where we can actually track if a student sees an ad and then actually makes it to a campus. We have web traffic similar to clicks and view-throughs. It's direct visits to our specific landing pages that we use to track some of these advertising events. Open rate is the percentage of people that open a specific email that we send out for action. And believe it or not, still people read emails. And swipe rate is the number of times the viewer of an ad literally swipes up, like on Snapchat or Instagram, to view more information or a landing page of an ad series. And while we measure many metrics for these ads, all contribute to the brand awareness and that feeling our system has in our colleges. So see, even if they don't take action on a specific ad, you see that. And more, I think it's up to 15 impressions somebody has to have for anything to actually start making sense in that brand at this point. So I'm going to go over Career in a Year. We launched in March of 2019 and went through early January 2020. This campaign really promoted and highlighted programs in which the first credential can be earned in 12 months or less. And this campaign is also kind of a get in the door campaign. Once they start a program, realize they can be successful in that program. We want them to earn the first credential, but our goal is to actually encourage the student to continue to stack those credentials, which can lead to more lucrative job opportunities and even a higher education, whether that be from a certificate to a diploma to an associate's degree and on. We targeted the general population in Tennessee with this, ages 17 to 24, and then also 25 to 54, with household incomes of $40,000. And we used both 15 and 30-second digital video ads, YouTube, pre and post-roll, radio, search engine optimization, targeted emails, display ads, site retargeting, which is targeting to customers based on their previous internet actions. So if you search for, college in Tennessee, we take that up and we display ads for them, even if they did not specifically search for a community college or a technical college. And we also ran heavy on the social media ads. And then my career started. We started that in May, which is our typical launch cycle for the fall. Our main goal was really to improve awareness and considerations for students in Tennessee to start their careers at one of our colleges, as well as increase student lead volume specifically for our colleges. We told the stories of real alumni from barbering, entrepreneurship, engineering, technology, all the way to banking and being a doctor and a nurse practitioner. And each of those alumni stories, they all started, obviously, from successful careers at a community or technical colleges. We used the same tactics as we did for career in a year, but we actually broadened the audience to capture middle school students. We started at 13 years old and displaying these ads. We also went after influencers in education and those that may be underemployed. Because again, if you've seen these stories, which I'm sure most of you have seen the commercials when they ran on YouTube and the previous presentations, they really are from the broad of someone who owns a series of barbershops now that started at TCAP Memphis to somebody that's a concrete engineer that started at a community college. It's a breath of fresh air, honestly, to hear some of these success stories and to let people know that real careers, whether it can be something, at a local level or something that you can actually go out and get a doctorate from, do start at a community or technical colleges, and they are quality programs. So digging into the metrics of this, in those two combined, we had a social reach of about 840,000 people. We had total exposure times to our display ads of about 30,000 hours. We saw an increase in 20% and specific on TCAT web traffic. We had 3 million OTT pre-roll views with a 97% completion rate, and OTT is over the top. So it's Hulu, anything that is on your TV that's not necessarily streaming cable. We also had about 340,000 target emails actually opened and over 2 million YouTube views, 12.5 million display impressions, and about 115,000 direct clicks on our ads. We can only calculate our ROI based on trackable actions, which in this case are clicks. So this does not include the investment we've had in overall brand awareness, such as television, outdoor, OTT, and so on. And so just doing an ROI for these two campaigns together on click performance, we had a total spend of 1.6 million. We do clicks by conversion rate, which in education, higher education, is around 11% times tuition times, let's just say 1.3 years. Now we do a very conservative conversion rate because there are so many decisions in higher education, especially in Tennessee. So at a very conservative rate, we had about a $12 million ROI for this campaign in click performance alone. And then 2020 happened and COVID-19. So when COVID-19 presented itself, we immediately started meeting senior leadership here at TBR and our campus marketing leaders to discuss our marketing plans. We knew we would have to make some adjustments to our existing plan, which this year was going to be geared towards adults and Reconnect. We started holding all hands on deck community college marketing and communications meetings, as well as started a TCAP marketing group made up of presidents from each region. These meetings contributed to our advertising plans and helped us understand how we could assist campuses even more in their marketing and outreach projects. And while we were running statewide campaigns, as Dr. McCormick mentioned earlier, each college was also running local advertising for their particular schools and programs, and we were assisting the technical colleges any way we could with their outreach. And there was intentional work to close the application gap that started at above approximately 30% decline to where the colleges are now at a roughly 12%. So we started this year with How We Do Summer campaign to increase the number of university transient students to take online summer courses through eCampus. We geofenced Tennessee universities, both public and private, pre-spring break. So before they went to spring break, before most campuses shut down and went online only, we actually geofenced those campuses and captured those devices to display ads with. And the idea was to encourage university students to take 1 or 2 summer courses from anywhere, their home vacation, between shifts and their summer jobs, which we kind of displayed with our imagery. And this is both a cost-saving and time-saving measure to the student from a trusted, public, transferable source in education. We've really pushed that online, public, and transferable with this. We launched the campaign a little earlier than we anticipated due to COVID-19, and it was an extremely crowded market, quite frankly, because every university, every for-profit decided to do pretty much the same thing at the same time. But we still had some traction in this. So we had about 8 million impressions total, about 18,000 direct clicks, a 0.23% click-through rate on those impressions, which is about 3 times higher than industry benchmarks. So that actually performed pretty well. About 18,000 unique visitors to that ad series landing page with about 22,000 sessions. And so we do the same thing with our ROI. We spent about $60,000 on this one with about a 6-to-1 return with about $380,000 in ROI spend. Next is the We're Ready campaign. Knowing the anxiety of students and parents post-spring break, we wanted to get a voice of encouragement for higher education in the state. So we started off with a soft, inspirational message of keeping your education on course and that online or on campus, when a student is ready, we're ready for them at our colleges. The We're Ready campaign was actually prefaced with a 2-week run of Career in a Year spot on broadcast TV morning and afternoon news programs, while we moved very quickly to get our first animated spot developed in just a few weeks. That's from concept to creative to script, everything. We also worked with the chancellor to send out approximately 32,000 letters to the parents of high school students who applied for Tennessee Promise and to all Tennessee Reconnect applicants. And those letters outline the benefits attending community technical colleges and going to school in the fall. And the chancellor did a great job with that. I'm going to go ahead and show both of the commercials that we ran. So you can have, if you have not seen them.
Right now, a lot of us feel unsure about what the future holds. Things we thought would never change are different today. But that doesn't mean you can't plan for the future. Tennessee's community and technical colleges are here to keep you moving toward your dreams. This fall, whether online or in person, we're here to help you take that next step in whatever way you feel safe and to keep you on course. When you're ready, we're ready. Start your career at tbr.edu/start.
And we followed up that commercial with a more direct message about not putting off enrollment in college. This next commercial started in mid-July and ran through the start of the actual semester.
Now is the time to start building your future. And Tennessee's community and technical colleges are ready to help you lay a solid foundation for success. With more than 175 teaching locations across the state, you can pursue your degree or technical certificate while staying close to home. Or you can take online classes from the experts in distance learning. Don't put off your future. Start your career today at tbr.edu/start.
And while we did digital ads, YouTube, OTT, we also did broadcast and cable TV for this. We ran in the morning shows. and afternoon news programming, because everybody was watching those at this time. We were reach ranging from 71 to 81%, depending on that market. And we did cover Chattanooga, Jackson, Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville, in the Tri-Cities. Frequency ranging between 13 and 18, depending on the market. And we had a total number of impressions of about 26 million on TV. We also ran an outdoor campaign that was co-branded between the local community colleges and the local TCATs. We had 39 boards across the state in July only. Some of those actually ran a little bit longer, mostly rural areas, customized by the location. And we had about 12 million impressions for those. So total with the We're Ready performance, we had about 43 million impressions, about 71,000 click swipes, the click-through rate of 0.61 on Facebook and Instagram. And again, that's about 6 times what the benchmark is. We had about an 80 or 59% view through rate, again, 27% above benchmark, a 77 OTT completion rate, which is around 20% above industry benchmarks, over 2 million YouTube video views, and a 0.64 swipe rate with Snapchat, which is about 10.1% above benchmark, or excuse me, 6 times the benchmark. And we had about 30,000 unique visits to the landing page. And so this one's a little bit more complicated with the ROI, but we will see this going forward, especially I believe in spring and next fall. So we had a total spend of these campaigns, which network TV is extremely expensive, of about $925,000. Our clicks through conversion rates with tuition had about a $7.5 million rate of return or return on investment, which is an 8-to-1 return on spend. And again, this one will play out a little bit more. And again, this is just click-through rates. So we're currently working internally with our campuses to plan a fall campaign and encourage the spring enrollment. It is going to be really a collaborative effort between local marketing, local admissions, local recruitment efforts, and with marketing to get the word out and to ease a little bit anxiety of going to college, because there are some barriers and we know those barriers exist. So we have to work hard to get them fixed, essentially. So Madam Vice Chair, at this time, I'd be glad to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I see Miles's hand is up.
Yes, a good report there, Matthew. I'll share something with you here. I should have done this already. I put together a little small task force within my organization to come up with some ideas what we could do to increase enrollment at Northeast. And one of the things that I didn't know this was going on, but one of the members on that little task force has a high school senior at Dobbins Bennett, and they're doing virtual college tours with students at local high schools. Were you aware of that, Matthew, by any chance?
I know some of our colleges are actually doing virtual admissions events, virtual tours, and virtual orientation. So right. They've been pretty successful.
Yeah. Well, this particular high school student has been, obviously he's very, very intelligent, but he's had universities from all across the country to reach out to him. And so he's going to have his pick. But the more we can do that sort of thing, I think the more interest we'll be able to generate. And we're going to do some other things too. Like I spoke to the superintendent this morning, and he's going to take his staff out to the new facility at Northeast State. And we're going to arrange for some high school students to go tour out there. And I'll send this list to you, some of the things we're going to be doing.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Weston? Regent Watt? There he is.
Hey, there we go. Yeah. Matthew got a full dose of me a week ago, so he's sick of talking to me.
Never.
But Matthew, I thought it'd be actually helpful for the good of the order. A lot of the folks on the call have been around a lot longer than I have. But a few of us are newer. One kind of twofold question and request. explain the history of why our TCATs don't have a marketing budget, and then just a little color that you gave me on your personal opinion about what the possibilities would be if they did. And I think that's particularly relevant both to the pandemic and even these questions that we ought to be asking about our equity gaps, because Russ has been working with me to get some specific numbers. Obviously, our data coming out of the TCATs looks different than it does in the community colleges, but the equity gaps are not nearly the same. And I think about my home county and our at-risk high schools put kids into Chattanooga State, and they frankly very rarely have a good outcome. Those at-risk high schools put young people into our TCAT, and they have great outcomes. But just, you know, obviously I'm asking you to opine a little bit, but I think it's helpful for us to understand that, you know, while the TCAT might have gotten a logo on that billboard I saw, they don't get much pub.
Mm-hmm. So the Complete College Act of 2010 called for a creation of a community college system, and part of the execution plan was to fund a community college marketing effort recurring. That plan called for about $2.4 million recurring from the state, and unfortunately that did not happen. And so we came up with a plan through the presidents at the community colleges and with the board and system office staff, and we instituted a 0.5% student fee for TBR that was collected by the colleges, and that is used for community college marketing and operations of marketing at the system level. That money is typically dedicated to doing community college and system marketing, and I do try to co-brand that when possible with the TCAT so they get some play in that. Typically that number is about between $1 million and $1.3 million per year, and as you know, if anybody is in the advertising world, to do a state campaign for that little money, we can't run full campaigns year after year, so we do save up a little money and try to run larger campaigns. We call that a little bit of a rainy day fund, and this year, as you see from those bins, it was raining, and we're trying to do our best to close those gaps. So that's a little bit of the history of the marketing fund. To get anywhere close to that number with the TCATs would be such a substantial fee that I don't think it's reasonable to even approach that. And I don't mean to speak for the chancellor or Danny for that, but it would be a substantial percentage increase. Well, I guess my question.
Go ahead.
My question wasn't so much about the fee, but just hypothetically, if there were serious resources that could be used to talk to prospective students, be them high schoolers or people coming back to be trained. I mean, there's a whole lot of ways to skin the cat. You know, there doesn't have to be a fee in order to promote TCATs. There's other ways to do that. But so I just actually thought it was helpful when you explained to me that, you know, there would be merit. I mean, this is obviously hypothetical, but these are things that are, I think, worthwhile, because often, in my opinion, the TCATs, you know, can be, particularly in our bigger markets, secondary. And I think in the minds of high schoolers, we're just honest with ourselves if we admit that they are considered lesser than, when we really want them to be thought of as just different than, and a really incredible way to launch yourself out into the world. Chancellor, did you?
Well, I was just going to say that it would be, back to the fee part, it would be a fee that would have to be imposed on technical college students, which we have not, you know, wanted to do at this point in time, certainly not in the environment we're in right now, if we were to raise any more money. But some of our technical colleges do have a small marketing budget that they use, that they set aside money usually out of their student activities fees to do that. So they're able to do some things locally and to get the word out that way. What we seem to have some of our most success with our technical colleges is Skills USA, that promotes our technical colleges to a very high level. And that is a statewide promotion that Matthew also helps with out of the system office. But to be able to do more for them would be wonderful. And I think, Regent Womp, you're right on that is an avenue that a lot of students just do not prevail themselves up because they are not totally aware of where that can take them and the opportunities that they can have if they go that route.
Yeah, well, I'll follow up, Chancellor. You and I have not had this conversation. I was actually talking to the marketing director at Chattanooga State, which, as you would know better than anybody, has the unique TCAT and community college relationship. But one of the upsides, I think there's probably more downside than upside, but one of the upsides is that they do get TCAT Chattanooga probably does have more of a marketing budget maybe than the rest, because that marketing office helps them. I just think, if we're on the one hand, it's a conversation, it's a long-term conversation, and we all recognize this is a pinch and pennies moment. But it's hard for us to say with a straight face, these options within our system are equal to each other when we do have this massive delta between how we market our community colleges versus our technical schools. And I mean, I come from a marketing background, so I apologize to Matthew for my kind of strong opinions here. But our 13 community colleges all have unique brands, right? And we do go and promote those. And the way that I, growing up in Chattanooga, knew about Chattanooga State was through advertising. And so it's obviously looks different for our 27 TCATs, but I think it's a conversation we ought to just have on an ongoing basis, that at a certain point for us to say in good faith, these are options that we take equal pride in, then we ought to find a way, even if it's just on a per capita basis, and maybe it requires a more creative funding source. But to talk about trying to promote the TCATs in a paid way better than we have.
And we do also have a lot of, while it's not direct funding resources for the TCATs, my staff at the system office, we do a lot of work for the TCATs, whether it be graphic design services, toolkits. We manage all of their websites from a system standpoint. So a lot of the money that the community colleges do have to dedicate to personnel and time and expenses, the TCATs don't necessarily have those directly.
And Matthew, you did not go into your latest, greatest creation, which is Tommy and Tammy TCAT Career Exploration. This is an actual book now that we're going to be putting into the hands of elementary school students. Last year, we did the coloring book that all technical colleges disseminated out to all of the elementary schools across the state. So we are investing in this arena, just in a different manner. But I'm really excited about this new book. This is just cute as can be, and it explores lots of different careers. And I feel like this will be read by many parents to many elementary school students for many years to come. So great job on that, Matthew and team.
Thank you.
The WOMP kids in Chattanooga need one of those for bedtime.
All right, we are going to get this in your hands. This is so cute.
Hey, go ahead and send it to the green kids as well.
There you go. There you go. In the mail.
Chancellor, anything else on your report, which has been substantive and robust on all three topics?
Madam Chair, that does conclude that part of my report today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple of more pieces of business, and I know we were committed to try to have us wrapped up at 1. If you don't have a conflict, a hard stop, I will need a quorum to transact some business here in the next few minutes. So once again, to Russ and Kim and Matt and the whole team, and obviously headed by the Chancellor, thanks for what was very substantive for us to hear today. And I know there's lots of next steps coming behind it, so we'll look forward to more. We do have one piece of unfinished business since we moved our interim action report from earlier. Chancellor, I will call on you to present that report, which of course is in everyone's board book.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The interim action report was included in the materials sent to all board members prior to the meeting today. This report does constitute a record of business transacted by the Office of the Chancellor since the previous quarterly meeting of the board. And Madam Chair, pending any questions, I recommend the board's approval of the report of interim action.
Any questions for Chancellor Tidings? And if there are none, we'll call for a motion to approve the report of interim action.
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Duckett. Any discussion? If not, I will ask our secretary, Mrs. Mason, to please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Gill.
Aye.
Regent Goldsmith.
Aye.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Hatcher.
Aye.
Regent McEllier.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Aye.
Regent Shockey.
Aye.
Regent Garland.
Aye.
Regent Wamp.
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Thank you. You're still on. Appreciate that. Motion
Yes.
carries.
Thank you very much. As we mentioned earlier, we took care of our new business item, that being the Personnel Committee report, when we handled committee reports earlier. So with that, we turn to a final item of business. And Chancellor, you are proposing to us our quarterly meeting dates for next year.
Yes, thank you. The proposed meeting dates for 2021, again, were included in your board materials. They are as follows: Thursday, March 25th at the TBR System Office. Thursday and Friday, June 17th and 18th at Columbia State Community College. Thursday and Friday, September 23rd and 24th at Pellissippi State Community College. And Thursday, December 9th, back at the TBR System Office. These are, of course, all pending that we are COVID clear and able to travel again. The two colleges that you see listed here were the two that were expecting us this year when we had to go to a virtual environment. Madam Chair, pending any questions, I do request approval of these dates.
Regent Wamp, did you have your hand up on this, or is that from previously?
No, that's again. And it's not a question so much about the dates as just what's our expectation about when we may be back together in person. Has there been any conversation about that being optional? As in, if you know, could we allow members of the board who wanted to convene in person to do so? We got plenty. You know, we've probably got enough room in that boardroom to keep 20 feet apart, and others could join by call. I just think, you know, sooner than later, I think, you know, if we're not careful, we'll get drug into the middle of next year, and there will still be a pandemic, but I think there's probably careful ways to see each other and have more of a naturally occurring conversation.
I think right now, the first one that we are planning on is the March 25th time for us to be back together. The next meeting is for December. We are planning on that one being virtual at this point. But the March 25th is the next one that we're planning on being back together.
All right. Any other discussions or comments on the meeting schedule? If not, we'll need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Prescott. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Was that Regent Varlin? Or who?
No,
No,
it
it
was
was
Regent Green.
Regent Green. Sorry. Thank you. I looked down and missed that. Any further discussion? If not, once again, a roll call vote, Sanja.
Thank you. Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Gill.
Aye.
Regent Goldsmith.
Aye.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Hatcher.
Aye.
Regent McEllier.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Aye.
Regent Shockey.
Aye.
Regent Varlin.
Aye.
Regent Wamp.
Aye.
Regent White. He had to drop off for another meeting.
Yeah.
Motion
All right.
carries.
Thank you all, and get those dates on your calendar, and we will hope for better times so we can be together. As the Chancellor mentioned, the next quarterly meeting is Thursday, December 10, and that will be conducted virtually. Chancellor, do you have any closing announcements for us?
No, but I do appreciate all of you meeting in this virtual environment. I know it is not the best, and we miss each other, and we'd like to be back together, but we are trying to keep you healthy as well as everyone else, making sure that we do a good job of social distancing. We are a little concerned about what fall flu season may do to our campuses. I think many of you are aware that we have sort of front-loaded labs into our programs because we don't know what fall is going to bring and whether or not we might have to go back to 100% virtual. So just stay tuned. We will try to do our best to keep you informed of happenings as they're occurring on campus. Remember that we have the COVID update on our website that you can go in and look at the count at every one of our colleges and their service region. We update that every Thursday, so it has the latest numbers updated on it every Thursday. And if you're concerned about a certain area around you, you can go in and just see what's happening within that region. It is infused with the Tennessee Department of Health data, so we show that regional data as well as just our local data. And Madam Chair, that is all I have for today.
Very good. And Sanja mentioned this before we formally assembled, and Joey Hatch may want to chime in here. On the good news front, we will celebrate 50 years of Nashville State, not this week, but next Wednesday, a week from today, with a special Zoom celebration. And if you're interested in joining that, Sanja has all of that information. But to Dr. Jackson and the team, here's to 50 more. So it'll be a grand celebration. Regent Hatch, anything to add?
Yes, I'll chime in. We have a great event planned. It's at 5 p.m. It goes for an hour. Joe Dubin, one of the local sportscast guys, is going to host it. We've got some alums like Milton Johnson that are going to speak. Sean Henry of the Predators, that while not a Nashville State alum, but a community college alum, is going to speak. So we've got some good stuff going on. So please join if you can.
Very good. It'll be a great evening, I know. Thanks to everybody, excuse me, who makes all of this happen for us, whether we're together or in this virtual format. I know that's an additional layer of complexity, and we are grateful. If there is no other business to come before the board, Chancellor and the team, keep up the good work, and to everybody else, be safe and well. We miss you. We'll stay in touch. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you so much.